Hi everybody, it's Miss Anderson. I hope that you're doing well today. I want to talk through a few problems with you today before you have some work time. So you're going to need whiteboard supplies. If you haven't gotten those already, you can pause the video until everybody gets those. So let's start with this problem. I'm going to give you a minute to try and see if you can set up a proportion and solve for h. So why don't you pause the video while you're waiting for everybody to try out the problem. All right, so here's one option for what your proportion should look like. The key is that you need to make sure that you put the heights of the triangles in the same places in your proportion. And then you also need to put the bases of the triangles in the same places in your proportion. It's possible that you wrote your proportions a couple different ways compared to what I have here. For example, you might have h over 6 and then 56 over 16. That would be fine. Or maybe you just have the fractions reversed like this. Any of those should end up giving you the same answer. So now what we're going to do is see if you can practice identifying different pieces that go together based on these different similarity statements. This is a skill that you're going to need for your quiz that you're going to take on Friday, making sure that you know how to match everything up correctly. So why don't you see if you can fill in the blanks, and you can go ahead and pause the video. Okay, so the key thing here is to make sure that you're looking at how the similarity statement is set up. So you'll notice that G and M are what we have at the beginning here. So you're going to want to make sure that you match G and M up together. And then if you look next, you've got H, and L is next in the other piece of the statement. So that means that H and L would go together. After that, we've got I, and then we've also got K. So that means I and K will go together. And then finally J and N. If you look at the way that these two pictures are set up, it looks like they're kind of a reflection of each other. So it's not a translation, but it's actually a reflection of each other. You're going to need that idea when we go to set up this next problem. So kind of keep in mind that they're basically like a reflection of each other. Okay, so now I want you to take this picture and see if you can set up a proportion and solve for x. And again, you can pause the video while people take a moment to do that. So here's a great way to set this one up. The 12 and the 15 are going to match up together because 12 is for GH and 15 is for ML. So you've got those two sides that are going to match up. And then if you look at where X is on the picture, X is between G and J. So G and J are the first and the last letter. M and N are the first and the last letter. So it's going to match up with a 30. And then if you cross multiply, you're going to end up getting 24. Why don't you give this problem a try? See if you can set up a proportion for this one. And again, you can pause the video while people do that. This problem actually has lots of different ways that you can set it up. This is just one option. When you cross multiply, you should end up getting 10 no matter how you have it set up. So if you look at what I did, I took OP, which was 49, the first two letters here, and I matched that with TS, which was 42. Now, it's very possible that instead you decide to use one of the other sides of the triangle. So maybe you decide that instead what you want to do is match up what PQ would be, this 35, and match that up with SR. If you did that, it would work out just fine. You know, PQ is 35 and SR is 30. If you set up the proportion this way, you would end up getting the exact same answer. So it's your choice which set of side lengths to use this time. You have a lot of information in this diagram, which means that there's more than one way to set it up. All right, why don't you go ahead and give this one a try. You're going to see if you can set up a proportion to solve for both x and y. One of the things that I would caution you about when you do this is to think about the two triangles separately. I think it's really helpful to draw the triangles out so that they're separated instead of overlapping. I think that really helps you to see that on this side here, this side is 12 plus x when you put them together. So when you put together this 12 and x, it's 12 plus x. Just like when you put together this 14 and this 7, you get 21. So you're adding them together. Some people like to draw it just slightly different. Some people like to do something like this, where they try to draw the little triangle inside the big triangle. You can do it that way as well. So why don't you see if you can set up a proportion? All right, I'm going to show you just two different visuals. So here's what it would look like if you had it drawn as two separate triangles. Here's what your proportion would look like when you're trying to solve for x. And then you'd end up getting 6. For y, you'd use the 14 and the 21 equals y over 40. And when you solve that, you'd get 26.67. If you like to visualize it where the little triangle's inside the big triangle, that'll work out just fine. You're going to get your proportion set up the exact same way. So you'd still get 6 for x, and you'd still get 26.67 for y. Okay, let's talk about your quiz on Friday. You're going to do a couple activities here in a minute. They're going to help you be prepared for your quiz on Friday. Your quiz on Friday is a real-world application problem where there will be a word problem along with a diagram, and you'll have to go through and see if you can answer some questions based on the information given to you. The types of things that you have to be familiar with are some things that are left over from chapter 2, like finding missing angles, whether that be alternate exterior or interior angles, same side interior, same side exterior, corresponding vertical, or knowing there's 180 degrees in a triangle. Or it could be things that are new for this unit to find missing side lengths, like doing proportions and doing Pythagorean theorem. This is going to be a summative quiz, but it's not going to be worth as much as most of your tests. Your tests are worth 100 points. This is just worth 22 points. So it's worth much less than a test, but it is still summative, so it still is important to make sure that you are prepared for it. The two things that I'm going to have you do today to help you prepare are two different worksheets. One of them is called the Essential Standard Angle Practice, and I'm going to show you an example of how to start that one in a moment. And then the other one is a set of word problems. So let me show you how I want you to fill out the Essential Standard Angle Practice. If you don't have this yet, it's all right for you to pause the video and then go grab the worksheets. And then you can listen to how to fill this in a second. So when you do this problem, you're going to see if you can figure out the measure of each of the angles in the problem. So in this first example, PQT is going to be 67 degrees. And the reason that it's going to be 67 degrees is that it's a vertical angle. You might have to do some calculating on some of these problems as well. If you look at how to figure out angle J, that one's going to be 36 degrees. And the reason is that there's 180 degrees in a triangle. So, you can put together the 115 and the 29 if you want to start with, and then just take that answer and subtract it from 180 to get the 36. I know some of you prefer to just do 180, subtract 29, and then subtract 115 right away. You could do that too, and you would still get the same answer. So kind of your goal on this worksheet is to make sure that you figure out how big the angles are, and then just to practice what those vocabulary terms are, because you're going to have to identify the correct vocabulary terms on your quiz on Friday. So these are the two worksheets that you are going to work on during class today. And then of course you have a homework assignment. Please take a look at the worksheets first, and then you can work on Canvas when you're done. Have a great day, everybody. So your homework assignment is the Essential Standard Practice.